even in the game come late game, and it's very hard to proc that actually as a Karma, because you would need something like both parts of your Q to land plus an auto attack or a QW auto attack, and even then you're probably throwing that on a frontline member. That Thunderlord's proc will not be the end of the world if you're throwing it, you know, on a Maokai or a Jarvan.
And when you're gonna have Fly on something that, you know, during the lane phase, you just kind of be content to sit there and farm. Doesn't matter how much CS you're ahead if you're Selfie in that case, because your Karma in a later game is not going to do as much damage as Fly is, and you kind of become more of like, you're trying to mitigate the damage the opposing carry is doing rather than trying to match it for yourself. As we saw in that late game team fight, it was all about the freeze damage, and Tempo Storm are going with their bot laner again, so we'll see if the draft once again revolves around the bottom side of the map here for Tempo Storm.
Yeah, well, they already are adapting a little bit in the bans. You see, like I said, that Corki ban out. Gold Coin United does not want to give away the Caitlyn first pick or the Elise first pick, so they're banning out a lot of these power play champions, unlike what we saw in the first game where they were saying, all right, we'll ban Zed because we just want a lot of stuff up. Completely different strategy this time around. We'll have to see what they go with. They go with the Kalista first pick. I would say that makes some sense. They were doing really well in laning phase. Even if they didn't get that solo kill onto Caitlyn initially, just forcing her out of lane like that would have been very good for them if they did not get a little bit greedy underneath that turret. So if you're Tempo Storm, we're talking about why we like best of 5 so much, because you have that one extra game to play with. You can say, all right, I think our strategy last game was mostly pretty good. Why don't we change up the mid lane pick, go with the same bot lane, and hopefully it works out better for us. Gold Coin United kind of keying in on that, wants to split that bot lane up. They grabbed the Thresh this time around.
Yeah, so they're going to have the playmaking support on Mad Life of all players, so they had him on Thresh, which will be really good. They're even hovering over the Rek'Sai, potentially going to be taking that one away from Tempo Storm and mitigating some of the playmaking ability coming out from Wiggly. As, you know, we talked about the creative jungle pathing that the Rek'Sai can go for. We also saw the heavy duo bot lane focus that that Wiggly was trying to put down on that side of the map, but they do wind up just swapping it up at the last second and going for the Maokai.
I do like this. They played the Maokai Rek'Sai last game. That matchup, the Maokai held even just fine and was much more effective in the late game team fights. So, you know, like we were saying, how Tempo Storm might be running this game slightly back the same way with maybe a couple small adjustments. Gold Coin United much the same way, saying that Maokai worked out pretty well for us. Let's pick that up again.
Yeah, especially when they wound up getting into, you know, the post 20-minute mark where they're fighting over objectives, they're getting into these kind of grouped up team fight areas. Santora's able to utilize the Maokai ultimate quite effectively, but this time around the Jace is left open and they're going to take that one away for Tempo Storm. Could be a Quas, could be a Selfie, most likely going to be a Quas. We saw him going for that full lifesteal build, Jace, just last week.
Yep, so maybe pretty likely. Hopefully he changes the build up a little bit, given the fact that lethality is so much stronger with the changes to the fact that it scales off your level now, plus the Duskblade and Ghostblade changes. So very strong. Here we see Fly grabbing the Galio, one of the power picks that did fall through. Tempo Storm do not grab it, and GCU looks like they're going to be pretty happy to throw that one in the mid lane most likely. But here's where you get into this interesting situation where Tempo Storm do have a Jace counter pick that can go mid as well, but GCU have the last pick. So this could be a situation where Tempo Storm flexes the Jace mid, puts something else top that's AD, and hopefully gets some more magic damage somewhere if they can do it. You know, maybe from the support position, you can grab something like a Zyra, who really knows, and then maybe you end up in a really weird situation where Fly or whoever on Gold Coin United can't really use that Galio pick too well.
Well, we did see GCU kind of adapting to that, and, you know, feigning the fact that Galio could go into the top lane, but also mitigating that extra AP threat coming out from the top solo position by banning away the Rumble. The response will be the Camille being banned away from Tempo Storm, so neither of these teams really committed to where that Galio or the Jace are going to wind up going, playing the flex pick game quite well in the second phase, and the Cassiopeia actually going to be banned away here by GCU.
This is not too much of a surprise. Cassiopeia, a decent matchup mid versus the Galio. Obviously, Galio can kind of survive it the way Galios tend to survive AP matchups, but it still can pressure it a little bit. And the Camille ban is specifically because we've seen this composition before out at TSM as well. You take the Camille on the top side, drop the Hextech Ultimatum, drop the Galio ultimate onto the Camille, and next thing you know, your top lane's dead. So, very understandable to try and split that one up. The Gnar ban is a little bit of a surprise. I mean, it's still very strong. This is kind of telegraphing the fact that the Quas is going to take that Jace topside. Jace still beats Gnar, which is why it's a little weird to see, but who exactly knows? They just try and limit what solo plays well. That is one of his best champions.
Right, as I say, it's kind of like a solo legacy staple. You know, when you've seen him basically playing through the promotion tournaments, even when he's subbed in very briefly on Echo Fox, the Gnar is kind of one of his de facto go-to champions in that top lane matchup. This time, Gold Coin United is going to put a little bit of a different twist on their bottom lane. They don't have the Caitlyn available since they banned it away themselves. Instead, though, they're going to be going for a Twitch, so there's still a lot of damage coming out for Rakara on the bottom side, but Sheep's going to get his hands on Blitzcrank this time, who's going to want to get his robot hands on that rat.
And that's the scary thing, is that generally speaking, this is a pretty good matchup for Tempo Storm's bot lane. We talk about how Thresh is a little bit annoying for a Blitzcrank if you're able to pull someone out after the Blitzcrank pulls him in using that lantern. But at the end of the day, Twitch is not very mobile, can get prone to being hooked a couple times, and then we've seen the all-in threat that comes with the Kalista. And here we see that Alawi pick. Quas's staple. We were talking about, you know, how we see the fact that Solo's known for his Gnar. This is Quas's kind of signature champion this split.
Yeah, so the Alawi will wind up being picked up for Quas. So if you're going to wind up trying to fight in an AoE, Quas ends up utilizing the ultimate from the Alawi, you're going to have a bad time as all those tentacles will be wailing away on you in the middle of the fight. It looks like the Kennen is going to be the last pickup here, so this is going to be Solo taking it into the top lane.
Definitely a champion that's fallen out of people's priority pretty heavily recently, just because at the start of the split we were seeing this kind of be like a first pick, first ban status for Kennen. As some of these tankier champions came into the meta, people sort of backed off the Kennen a fair amount, as well as the fact that itemization wasn't great for Kennen overall. Here we see, though, with the Alawi, they just want to grab something from range, but we've also seen the fact that Quas does make things work with the Alawi seemingly out of nowhere. You're in a grouped up team fight situation, something that you think Alawi's not great at, something like a siege or just standing off near Baron. He hooks out your frontline member with his test of will, pulls someone in, they get him very, very low, and all of a sudden your frontline member is chunked out despite never really getting out of position.
Right, and so the Alawi in these siege positions could be something that Tempo Storm utilized that they didn't necessarily have last time. It also means it's going to be a mid lane Jace for Selfie, something that I was excited for when they originally flexed it into the top lane. So now we're going to see Selfie taking maybe potentially a more lethality-centric Jace into the mid lane, but we got a bunch of different looks to a bunch of different players this time around. Fly's going to be on something a little bit tankier in the mid lane. Solo's got himself a little bit more of a lane-dominant champion. It's game number 2 of the Challenger semifinals with GCU already up 1-0.
GCU still have a very strong front line through their mid and jungle position. This is kind of like what we were saying we saw out of E United last night, where they had about 2 to 3 tanks every single game. This time around, they do have the Thresh to the support position. But that said, if a Galio jumps in to follow up on a Maokai engage and then an Alawi drops her ultimate, that's playing kind of into Tempo Storm's game plan as well. For the most part, Twitch will play outside of Alawi's range, as long as he doesn't get caught out of position. But this will be a very fun game to watch just because there's a lot of physical damage on Tempo Storm side. GCU tanks can build a lot of armor, but if they don't get good engages off and blow up a member of Tempo Storm, then that Quas ultimate will probably be able to turn these fights. It's going to be a very execution-heavy game. Yeah,
Gold Coin United do have a guaranteed kind of way for the Galio to be delivered into a fight, as he can wind up just using the hero's entrance on top of a Maokai, who will twisted advance with a point-and-click CC on his W. But you have the Gragas coming up from Wiggly as well. He saves that explosive cast. He could use it as soon as Maokai walks in. The Galio ultimate will follow, but Maokai won't be there to help, you know, kind of set up in the front line.
I mean, there's so many different options here for GCU. Of course, Kennen being a bit of a split push threat potentially if he's able to get ahead. Hopefully then they can avoid team fights, because like we said, it is a little bit of a dicey situation with all the counter-engage tools with Tempo Storm. It's much better if you can just win the game without needing to team fight.
Right.
You also have the Twitch. You can stealth around the map, potentially get a gank off, and then you can also have the Galio join in on the submarining Twitch, one of those old kind of strategies that we saw more with Shen back in the day, now being executed again, potentially with the Galio pick in the mid lane.
So they got a lot of options on Gold Coin United, and Tempo Storm going to be looking to limit them if at all possible. We saw a bit of a solo queue style leash coming in from GCU on the bottom side as Rikara and Mad Life are leashing away for Santorin's Maokai, whereas the bottom side, Freeze and Sheep got the jump on the laning phase here. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Selfie and Fly will be trading back and forth the Selfie with the range advantage up there. It's normally a matchup we see in the top lane, we'll see in the mid this time around. Bot side of the map, we have to be a little bit wary here, as this can get a little bit explosive depending on who hits 2 first. Most likely be Tempo Storm's bottom lane, as they did wind up getting into lane a little bit earlier. We can see that GCU have to give them that respect. They know when those minions are going to give them enough experience to get there.
Also with Blitzcrank having that execute on the Targon's passive, able to kind of kill some frontline minions a little bit faster than a Jace can, or excuse me, a Thresh can.
Well, speaking of the Jace, we see Selfie getting aggressive in the mid lane against Fly. He just delivers a quick Justice Punch to the face onto Selfie. But Fly going around the backside here, trying to cut off the escape coming out from Selfie. Santorin there as well, but with Selfie feigning towards that side of the map, they kind of smell that Wiggly's in the area, so they don't want to dive too far.
Kind of nice scout out there on the side of GCU. Selfie was not in full retreat mode, still trying to trade some damage back as Wiggly was over the wall. Kind of telegraphed to GCU where they thought he would be starting. or excuse me, where he would be on that right side. Also, given the fact that he did not start in the bot lane, that was kind of scouted out by GCU as well, just given where people were, how quickly they were in lane, things like that. So, good call to back off that mid lane gank.
So mid lane going pushed out aggressively from the side of Tempo Storm. The top side of the map, however, looks to be going a little bit more in favor of Gold Coin United. Whereas that Kennen, you mentioned the fact that he's a little bit of a stronger laner for solo this time around, but more importantly, can bully a lot of these melee matchups, specifically crosses the ladder. Going for the Cole start as well, so a little bit of shades of Huni from SKT, you know, picking up that early stacking, not necessarily stacking, but the kind of the investment.
The investment, for
yeah.
sure. Something that is very understandable given the fact that Kennen's going to win this lane regardless. You can go for a little bit of a, you know, quote-unquote greedy purchase, given the fact that you should not be under any pressure. You can farm up till you get that, sell it off potentially, the power spike on that Blade of the Rune King a little bit faster. Keep trying to harass, mowing down onto Quas in that Alawi pick, who does not have great tools to deal with a ranged champion.
Not quite, but we talked about tools to deal with a little bit of range. On the bottom side of the map, we see Fly utilizing the teleport. Picks up a duo pair of Doran's rings and a extra healing potion for himself, the refillable potion that is, to keep himself sustained in lane. Bottom side of the map, we see Mad Life and Sheep trading blows as we see Wiggly kind of coming around the corner, waiting to bait this one in, but Rakara and Mad Life, they stiff this one out on a ward. Rakara needs to play safe, and that's why he's down about 8 CS right now, just 5 minutes in.
Santorin going for another one of these lane ganks. They've gone for a couple of them. Flash available for Mad Life. Could go for Flash, Lantern, Flay play. But there is a deep ward in lane, but Freeze jumps forward. Could be the go button. Yeah,
and meanwhile, Wiggly's on the opposite side as well, so Mad Life flashes in. Santorin is there to follow with the Twisted Advance. They lock down Amalka. He has to flash to run away. The teleport is coming in from Quas, and he wants to play, but looks like he will get stunned up by Solo on the top side, canceling out that teleport. GCU tried to jump for the play, but they're going to back away.
Both teams getting a little bit of a read on what the other one wants to do. Tempo Storm knew that GCU was potentially coming in for that bot lane play that Wiggly had shown on a ward and seemingly backed off, but instead of just wrapping around to sit in the brush and wait for Santorin to come up through the lane. I wonder if that TP was canceled out by Solo or if Quas made the decision to not finish it. Mad Life was kind of already past where the teleport was coming in, and Alawi does not have any hard CC, so there's no way to kind of lock him down if he does finish that teleport.
So while the teleport was canceled on the top side, mid lane here getting very aggressive here. Fly getting the best of Selfie after getting that back early on. Selfie has gone for the serrated Dirk, so a little bit more lethality on this Jace. Fly's going to take a brunt of the damage from a Shock Blast Gate combination, but Selfie's the one who has to back away.
Forced out of lane, but already accruing a pretty big CS lead for himself. Up about 15. Just 6 minutes in the game. Extremely strong laning champion. Something that suits Selfie's style a little bit more, given the fact that we were saying he can be a very lane-dominant player. The Karma going even. Jace, a champion who can really take over a lane space.
So we'll see if Selfie's able to get the advantages in the mid lane as topside Solo actually dropping down fairly low. I did hear that it was Solo that canceled the teleport from Quas, so potentially wanting to finish that one, or not. That Quas, why not getting the teleport canceled?
And there you see some unfamiliarity in the matchup. Solo gets his vessel pulled out of him, or spirit pulled out and then turned into a vessel, excuse me. Get the terminology right.
That's how your demigod, physics work. You get turned into a vessel because your spirit has been broken.
Yes, exactly. And there we see it alive for a little bit longer. Quas is going to try and finish it off. And this is one of the things that, in theory, Kennen should be a good matchup onto Alawi as long as you can avoid those. But Quas understands the champion a little bit better, able to use the brushes to his advantage. And here, Solo forced out of lane, actually sticking around. But trying to just farm until he can get his first nice item power spike, probably trying to get to that cutlass.
And we see him still taking a little bit of punishment here, whereas Quas with the Doran shield has been able to regenerate himself up, so Solo will eventually be forced out of lane with Santorin on the top side recalling as well. Has already got the Bambi Cinder for both of these junglers here. Solo not going to quite get canceled out by that Test of Faith.
But it does instantly make him a vessel, apparently. So that is a bit of a funny interaction. If you don't know, on teleport, the last half second, you cannot be interrupted even by damage. So I believe that's the state Solo was in when he get hit by the Test of Will, but that still pulls his spirit out, and then the teleport finishes completing, instantly breaking the range where that makes you a vessel, and goes back into base all purple.
Yeah, well, that's going to be really annoying because that, of course, also means that whoever else was back in base with him, there would be a tentacle that spawns in the fountain so you can see who's ever back in base, but also really annoying if you get poked down while trying to heal up on the fountain. But we are going to see that Fly has made his way back from the base into the mid lane, has picked up a cloth armor and a pair of boots for himself, but is also donated over a blue buff, so he's going to be able to spam those Winds of War to compete against this Jace wave clear in the mid lane. Jace has a blue buff of his own.
Now that said, the thing that we saw that was very annoying, that was highlighted well in Game 2 of yesterday's series, was the ability of the Galio to join in on plays. Like this one that's potentially breaking out in the bot lane right now. You see Fly already on the way down.
Yeah, there's double teleports coming in, one from Quas and one from Solo, but Fly makes his hero's entrance. He's able to Justice Punch onto Freeze. First blood has already gone down. It's going to be Solo that takes down Wiggly, who is joining the fray. Quas is in the backline trying to cause some chaos, but he only winds up going down as Fly picks up a kill for GCU.
Perfectly timed to illustrate the point I was trying to make, was that with that blue buff, Fly would be able to kind of get out of laning phase a little bit. Selfie's doing his best to punish, does have a 30 CS advantage and drops the turret down to below half health, but he's making the best of a bad situation at this point as a double kill did go in GCU's favor, and now he's caught out of position.
The taunt winds up landing, and Solo is here. The stun not quite going to connect. One more shuriken toss will get it, but Selfie just walks away. Actually had to burn a flash as well.
A little surprised to see GCU just back away. They prioritize keeping that mid lane turret alive as opposed to potentially looking at grabbing that Infernal Dragon. Would have been a nice little prize to get off the back of that 2-for-0, but they decided to keep it alive for now. And here's what I was just in the middle of saying was that, you know, the problem with Galio mid is not that you can't beat him up in lane if you take a specific counter pick, but that even if you do, he can still make these kind of global plays and kind of counter out the aggression in the side lane. Shows up with a nice 3-man ultimate, keeps the chain CC down there onto Freeze. This time around, Solo channels his teleport as well to match Quas, and you end up with a 5v4 in the bot lane that they're able to win 2-for-0.
Yep, and they jump down onto Mad Life as well, so the bonus resistance is coming out from Fly on somebody who's a little bit tanky with that Sight Stone. You aren't able to really melt through him, so 2 kills go over to Gold Coin United, 0 so far on Tempo Storm's side, but even though GCU has 2 kills, the gold is all evened up because it's Tempo Storm who are dominating this lane phase, even on the top side of the map where you would think that Quas would be behind in CS. He's got a 10 CS advantage, 18 CS on the bottom side, and you mentioned 30, 25-ish so CS advantage in favor of Selfie.
So that keeps the gold about even. And that's why I was saying, wouldn't minded to see GCU go for that Infernal Dragon. It's something that both teams use extremely well. Tempo Storm with multiple AD building members. GCU a little bit tankier, but they would have benefited from it as well.
We see Quas recalling on that ward, and Santorin actually going to pop the Maokai ultimate after Quas goes back. So the Infernal Dragon goes to Tempo Storm, but the fight might be going over to GCU. Selfie on the backside gets taunted up, taken down by Fly. Good Fate's call coming out from Freeze's Kalista will be able to save Sheep, so they mitigate the damage at just 1 death.
They mitigate the damage, but they do lose the Infernal, or get the Infernal Dragon, excuse me. So obviously Tempo Storm's going to be pretty happy with that trade. Unlikely that GCU can actually take this turret despite their best efforts to pressure down on it. You see them already agreeing, yeah, we're not going to be able to break this one. We're going to go back to our lanes. And there you see a bit of a punish on the side of GCU, given the fact that they could have grabbed that Infernal Dragon for themselves after that bot lane skirmish.
And Tempo Storm instead getting the jump on the objective. They were the ones that got the first Drake of the game in game number 1. Though it was Gold Coin United that in the later stages of the game, when they grouped up for those team fights around objectives, were able to steal one away with a Piltover Peacemaker and then take the Baron to really close out the game. But Tempo Storm's objective control early game has been a little bit better than their opponents on GCU. But GCU's ward coverage, when we were praising them for it in game 1, we praised them for it all split. Still around the Rift Herald area, very solid despite losing the bottom side of the map.
Here you see Quas getting that Raptor's Cloak early on. It's always a treat to watch Quas play. Not only does he break out different champions, but he also has a pretty different way of building them than a lot of other people. Of course, you would say you should go for a Black Cleaver first on an Alawi, or even a Death Dancer, 2 of the most common items. Here you see that early armor and health regen going to help him out with some of the harass that comes in from the physical damage building.
I remember a long time ago when Quas was playing the Alawi, he was going for the Death Stance and the Iceborne Gauntlet. So he had slowing fields, he had sustain for days. There was no way you could really deal with him once he hit his 2-item power spike. The Raptor's Cloak going to be a little bit more of a defensive purchase here, and we'll see what he winds up turning that one to, or turning that one into as the game progresses a little bit. But Gold Coin United, while we were just mentioning the CS advantages for Tempo Storm are in their favor, Gold Coin United has been able to sneak out to a 1.5k gold advantage because those CS counts have been evened up. Plus, well, now they got 3 kills on their side.
Yeah, and while they've been able to even them up, you also see Tempo Storm's bot lane going for a curious rotation up to the top side there. Looked like they were a little bit slower than GCU, so GCU's already hitting away this turret. Now that said, Quas probably a little bit better at defending the turret. Pulls Thresh underneath. Rikara hitting away on this, and Solo's going to vacate the top lane, so no one's going to be trying to defend that, but with Boss staying to defend the turrets, Santorin's going to start off with a dive.
Yeah, so Santorin's going for it. The Maokai ultimate is out. Maokai was taking it up first, and now it's going to be Santorin taking a lot of damage here. The Test of Fate coming in, and Santorin actually winds up going down to the Spirit popping on him. Quas gets a kill on a 1v3 tower dive.
And there you see the power of the Alawi pick doing exactly what it wants to. Three people jump on top of it, you pop that ultimate, you get that kind of lifesteal drain tanking that Quas loves so much. And he's able to stay alive underneath his turret, not only defending the push, but getting a kill back. This allows Tempo Storm's push up in the top side to complete first, and you get first third of the game.
Guess that's why you get a Raptor Cloak.
I guess so.
Must be why. Must be why. The only reason why. But Fly going to do a little bit of a 2v1 impression of his own, getting a taunt under tower, trying to keep Selfie and Wadley from taking down the mid lane tower. But Tempo Storm, you mentioned the rotations from Freeze and Sheep onto the top lane. They've already gotten first tower gold on that top side of the map. And now Quas is going to be able to push in Rikara on this bottom side since he's got no support anymore.
Nice play overall out of Tempo Storm. You see them now pressuring around this mid turret, going to make a move for their second of the game, and it doesn't look like GCU's in position to defend this at all.
Yeah, this is already low from that fight in the bottom side. Selfie was not able to join up with that one, so he was able to just pressure down the mid lane tower, and that one falls like a domino as the second tower of the game goes to Tempo Storm. Might be behind in kills, but they're making up for those two towers.
Definitely making up for it. Now about 1,000 gold advantage. Here we see that dive once again by Quas. Santorin, or on Quas, excuse me, kicks this off with some chain CC. They get it into the root. They get another root from the Maokai ultimate, and they almost get him down low enough, but he's able to flash away, use the W to reset to get some more tentacle procs off that heal you up, and just barely able to survive through that. I think Rikara might have been a little early on popping his E.
Contaminate.
Did not quite have maximum stacks, I believe. Now, it's hard to say if that would have mattered at all because Quas's drain tanking might have kept him healthy. Either way, there you see that Alawi pick and some of the unfamiliarity of teams and knowing exactly how much damage they need to take it down.
And it looked like Santorin might have popped from the Test of Fate. It was actually the last tower shot that came in and took him down. So the tree dives in a bot lane tower, it will fall down and make a sound. And now Gold Coin United on the bottom side of the map are trying to make this play happen again. But Quas is ready and waiting to make this one go in his favor. His ultimate's back available. He's hit level 11, so that one's going to be even more powerful. He's picked up a Caulfield's Warhammer. He's got a little extra damage, a little extra CDR. Kind of pretty much saying, bring it on.
And that's the thing about, Alawi in this champion is that it does actually scale decently well into the late game. We think of it, a lot of cheesy picks as being kind of, and I say cheesy with quotes, of course, because the Alawi pick, Quas has demonstrated, does work. We've even seen it just split on the Challenger broadcast, working out for him. But a lot of these weirder counter picks are often considered more for their early game advantages, and they're able to get advantageous matchups. Alawi is a champion that actually does decently well into the late game if you are not able to position very effectively around it. So Quas has done a good job staying relevant into the early game, and now come late game, he's hopefully going to find some opportunities to yank some spirits out of people around objectives and get some kills. But here, Selfie trying to get involved with Solo.
Yeah, Selfie coming around here. The teleport's being channeled immediately by Fly, so he will stop any sort of advance coming out from the Jace, but it will give Quas a chance to base. We did see the Rift Herald going down in favor of Tempo Storm just a couple seconds ago. Wiggly's picked that one up for himself, and we'll see as he makes his way down towards this Mountain Dragon. They utilize that one as a distraction on the bottom side to pressure that tower, the last remaining outer one from Gold Coin United, and then turn their focus towards that Mountain Drake objective.
Selfie wants a bit of Solo, goes in, chunks him out super hard, baits the ultimate, will get stunned out.
Yeah, he's got nothing left available. They are going to use the hero's entrance here from Fly to dissuade Wiggly from coming around the side and turning that one around, but that's Selfie packing a punch already. Well, he has a Duskblade of Drakthar and an additional Serrated Dirk, so lethality, pretty good statistic.
Pretty strong overall.
A little bit.
You see the passive proc of the Duskblade throwing in that extra damage on the all-in attempt by Selfie. It's one of those items that, like we said, was hot-fixed a little bit, but still considered very, very potent. GCU, though, look like they're going to get the advantage on this Mountain Dragon. Tempo Storm have basically gone for the mid lane push instead. There, Santorin's able to drop the Maokai ultimate, send all those roots up the river. cuts off Tempo Storm's attempt to collapse.
Tempo Storm looks like they might be trying to cut off GCU here. As a flash hook from Sheep will not land, as the flash response there is from Solo. But now they got to contest with this Rift Herald that's barreling down the mid lane here. So Gulkon United able to zone away Tempo Storm from the Mountain Drake, and actually going to be able to respond to the Rift Herald quite well in addition to that. So Gulkon United, they don't cede any objectives. Well, Selfie's on the bottom lane, so that bottom lane tower may wind up falling just a little bit. But they're able to trade objectives, getting a Drake for themselves pretty much, you know, just by zoning away the Maokai ultimate.
That's great and all, but the thing about the Mountain Dragon is while you sometimes see how absolutely broken it appears to be when forcing down around Baron with a team that can do a lot of damage to neutral objectives or even to turrets, from behind, Mountain Dragon's relatively worthless because you do need to hit some kind of objective to get any value out of it. And Goldcoin United is far enough behind now, and they haven't really been set up in front of a turret in such a long time that I'd be surprised if they find an opportunity to really use this effectively for a little while. Maybe they'll find a chance to take more dragons with it, or potentially a Baron come later in the game. But as long as Tempo Storm has these basically 3 winning lanes, it feels like GCU might not be able to use this objective for quite a while. And therefore, it favors Tempo Storm's trade of taking a turret.
Yeah, Tempo Storm already about a 2,500 gold lead in their pocket. The bottom lane tower might be the one that Gold Coin United tries to focus down, as that one is continuously being pushed down by Solo. You take a look at the gold leads, though. One of the big factors here is Tempo Storm looks like they're playing this game more in control, but a lot of that factor is going to be the gold lead that Freeze has been able to solidify over Rakara in this Kalista versus Twitch matchup. He's no longer playing from behind. While Freeze is ahead, Tempo Storm is in the lead.
Tempo Storm in the lead. They use that to get really nice vision control deep in GCU's jungle. Now you see Solo in a bit of a precarious position, wrapped around by Sheep as the rest of Tempo Storm collapses, but Fly's going to give him some backup.
Ooh, and Sheep takes a lot of damage here from Solo. Justice Punch comes in, a teleport's being channeled in by Quas's Alawi, but they're able to pick up a kill on Blitzcrank, and they just walk away.
Yeah, Tempo Storm trying to set up a little bit of a pincer maneuver, but GCU just aggressively attack one end of the flank, blow up the Blitzcrank, and run out over his dead body.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a whoops moment there, as we saw Freeze trying to wrap around the other way to cut off all their sorts of escape routes, but the Blitzcrank is not quite tanky enough yet. He has boots of mobility, and the Eye of the Equinox, he's got no resistance, this is only level 8.
And you see, like we said, they have great vision control here. Oh, Selfie going for that all in, does get stunned up.
Ooh, and Solo barely gonna survive. Actually, Selfie's gonna take a tower shot, but he's gonna be the one that survives. Looks like Solo might be able to stay alive for that one because of the stun, but Selfie's able to pick up a kill.
And there you see why some people might have complained a little bit about lethality on this patch, able to kind of blow up Solo despite his best efforts to stay alive. That buys him a lot of pressure. Really nice vision control by Tempo Storm. They're able to make all these aggressive pathing decisions because of that complete control of the jungle. They know that they're safe to walk right through it. Now Fly stuck a little bit on zoning or wave clear duty against this Alawi. He's going to keep making him a vessel over and over.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about the tanky Galio is the fact that he's also a pretty big target to hit with that Test of Fate, so Quas going to be A-okay to wail away on the Effigy Spirit. Goldcoin United, though, they were able to pick up a kill. They lost the kill for themselves, too, so Tempo Storm are going to be able to maintain their gold advantage for now. They're also going to have to maintain kind of this vision control. They've got a lot of control wards on the bottom side of the map, and they have some vision control down there. They picked up the Scuttle Crab of another control ward on this top side, so they're doing a pretty good job of choking out vision from the side of Goldcoin United, even though GCU has been able to sneak a ward into the back of that Baron pit.
Yeah, they don't quite have enough pink wards. Obviously, Sheep has 3 for himself, which is great, but you need someone else to grab one. And all the other pink wards are kind of down the bot side of the map. It is still relatively early into the game. Tempo Storm has done a good job growing this lead up to 3,000 now. No need to get over-aggressive and force around this Baron pit. You can take this a little bit slower. There's another Infernal Dragon in 2 minutes. You can keep your pink wards down the bot side for now to keep them relevant for that impending Infernal Dragon, and then after you grab that, then really focus on that Baron a little bit more.
And as we're looking at the side of Tempo Storm, Wiggly making his way down to the bottom side of the map again. We'll wind up body slamming down onto Solo, but he might just be playing a little bit of zoning duties, waiting for Selfie to get himself into that lane situation. Does not want Solo to put the tower down. Tempo Storm themselves have hit some pretty strong item spikes. You see a Jarvan's Fist from the side of Quas to max the death stance he has decided to go for. Double lethality items on the side of Selfie, as you see cheeky little blast going in over the wall from Mad Life. Knocks Quas away from that spirit for just a little bit longer. Also, a QSS picked up extremely early on from Freeze, making sure that he knows that he's going to be a bit of the focus in these fights. He wants to keep himself A-okay away from a lot of the CC. There's a Mad Life hook coming out from the Thresh pick. There's the Justice Punch and the taunt coming out from Galio. And of course, the stuns coming out from both Centaur's Maokai and if the Kennen gets in the fight.
Yeah, GCU do have very strong team fighting tools, but Tempo Storm is in a little bit of a position here where they don't need to necessarily opt into a team fight. They have enough pressure in their laning phase, and you already see this Alawi pick being a little bit of a nightmare for frontliners trying to walk in for vision control and things like that. Pulled the Maokai Spirit and was able to drop him down to about half health without even popping the vessel. So you start seeing how much damage that there is available just by pulling that Spirit on frontline members, and that basically gives you a free chunk out on a primary target. Yeah,
we've seen Santorin last game going for the Knight's Vow because he had two poke-centric, very heavy AD champions in the Caitlyn and the Corki. This time changing up, going for the Right's Glory, so he wants to have a way to initiate and reach them into the fight before actually having the Galio or somebody else pop into the fight beside him. It's going to be Tempo Storm that set up a little bit of a Fnatic rush here on the bottom side. Once again, Test of Fate goes down, Fly chunked down about half HP by that Alawi Spirit.
Yep, now he's a Vessel as well. There's all these tentacles spawning around at you. It becomes very uncomfortable to try and force, walk in onto Tempo Storm after that. They do posture up around the Baron, which slightly pulls Tempo Storm away from the Dragon, but Freeze is going to go on a little bit of a solo mission. He's going to work down on this Infernal Dragon while Tempo Storm looks like the rest of them are going to play a little bit of zoning duty, make sure there's no Baron being taken away from them.
That is a lot of spears in that Dragon. Does not look comfortable.
That said, GCU just blast coned over and looks like they were thinking about sneaking that Baron attempt. Not actually able to do so. They're forced to vacate the Baron Pit as Freeze secures the second Infernal Dragon of the game for Team Tempo Storm.
Yes, Tempo Storm stacking up on those Dragons now. 2 Infernal Drakes means there's going to be a lot of extra damage coming through. It'll help out the Callista, who doesn't necessarily build raw AD, but will scale very effectively with those Infernal Drake buffs. Helps out Quas, because we already seen the amount of damage that the Alawi can put down in some of these uneven fight situations. That 1v3 tower dive went sour for Gold Coin United, and Tempo Storm maintaining control of what they've had. They have a 3,000 gold lead. They're scaling up into the later stages of the game. Selfie's Jace pick in the mid lane has been very effective so far. They've been able to get towers down because of it. They have a little bit better siege now. They got a little bit of an extra range threat, so their short-range Callista isn't necessarily the only thing they have to worry about from the side of GCU. And GCU, they just need a little bit more time. They still have a late-game Twitch. They still have a very beefy front line, but the Kennen pickup, it's 2-1-1. It's doing okay, but it hasn't done exactly what they wanted to against the Alawi.
I think this is a great game to illustrate the importance of the early game snowball a little bit for picks like the Callista and the Jace and things like that, because GCU was hanging even in this game. They made that bot lane play. It was looking great. They don't grab the Infernal Dragon. Tempo Storm flips their bot lane up to the top side, and GCU could have potentially got that dive off and grabbed a turret. And then once they fail that single play, since then, Tempo Storm has had gold control the entire way. So it was a small mistake that really came back and bit them in the butt a little bit, because all these snowballing picks now have a gold lead.
Well, GCU realize Tempo Storm's going for this Baron play. They hook in Santorin now, but he's able to flash his way out. Not even flash, but he gets explosive cast out of that one. He won't want to fall into the Test of Fate Spirit, but he gets his ultimate off beforehand, so Tempo Storm got to be a little bit careful. They've rooted up on Freeze, actually, who's stuck in the front line, and that's going to be a priority kill for GCU in this fight. It's still a 1-for-1, though. Another vessel has been made. This time it's fly-shaped, as the Galio will be the one spawning the tentacles. Tempo Storm trying to chase down on this one. All the carries are fairly low. A flash hook will be flashed away by Solo, but he's already used the Lantern coming out from the Thresh pickup. Tempo Storm will scatter GCU to the winds.
Overall, though, not a bad defense by GCU. Freeze getting caught out of position a little bit by that Maokai ultimate locks him up for the rest of GCU to finish off the Callista. Would have been a 1-for-0 otherwise. Maybe would have been able to lifesteal back up and force that Baron. Instead, they kind of have to go for a small consolation prize, a mid-inner turret. Obviously, very happy with that in the end, but not quite as effective of a Baron bait as it could have been.
Yeah, can't really complain about the outcome of it, though. They wound up getting an extra 1,000 gold in their advantage, and this is them, judging how strong they are. GCU took a bit of poke damage to start this one off, but good hook here by Sheep is really what starts the fight off.
Good hook by Sheep, but a good counter engage by Fly. Gets that 4-man taunt off, able to frontline pretty well, while Rakara kind of rains in damage from the backside. Has a really nice spray and pray to get a lot of people low, and then that Maokai ultimate locks up the Callista, which allows him to finish that kill off. He did get pretty low himself, so Rakara had to back off after that, but you do see some of that team fighting power by GCU there.
We did see that Solo teleported into that fight, didn't actually use the slicing Maelstrom, and now it's going to have to be Fly that's on pushing duties, but GCU, they're not far. Yeah, they're not responding to this one nearly as quickly as the last one. They do have a ward in the back pit. It's actually going to be a teleport coming in from Galio on the backside, so this is Callista securing that Baron with her Ren stacks, and that's going to be Solo chunked down extremely low. Quas the flash forward. bops him on the head, goes onto a killing spree. Now they've locked up down on the Fly, who teleported into this fight from that backside. Does get a taunt onto two members, but crucially not onto Freeze. He's going to use the hero's exit in this case, but the Ren stack slow him down. Wiggly's there to knock him up with a body slam, and Freeze picks up a kill for Tempo Storm.
Tempo Storm, really nice reforce onto that Baron buff, not giving GCU a moment to rest. You saw them kind of slow getting there, and then by the time they do have the Maokai in position, Kalista has built up enough snacks that I think it was smart for GCU to not actually flash into the pit. The problem was they still had postured around it, so Tempo Storm's able to find a couple cleanup kills, and it looks like they might be trying to end the game already.
Hey, this is the challenger play so far in the summer split. You get a Baron, you try to end the game with it. Tempo Storm has, there's two members dead on the side of GCU, as though Solo has just respawned, so looks like they will be a little bit more careful. They didn't see exactly where the Twitch was because he was invisible, so they get the Baron buff, they back away. They get a mid-inhibitor, though. It's pretty good.
Yeah, really nice play out of Tempo Storm. I thought they were going to end it. I was getting ready. Didn't quite happen, but here we see the reforce by Tempo Storm. Santorin is in range and could try and walk up, but he's scared of getting his spirit pulled by Santorin. And then you're also, like we said, up against a Kalista who probably already has 10, 15 stacks into that Baron buff. You're very likely to outsmite it, or very unlikely to outsmite it anyways. And then Fly just kind of gets CC'd after he teleported in. They did not commit to kind of giving up the Baron fast enough. They give up a couple kills on the way out, and that allows them to go and take that mid inhibitor. And with that already down, it's going to become very difficult for the side of GCU to try and hold on to their base, not having as much defensive tools available as they would have liked. This Kennen, the split push being completely ineffective at this point in the game, not a super strong team fighter either. It's going to be very hard for them to find a way to actually beat Tempo Storm in a 5v5.
Yeah, the team fight from Tempo Storm at this point in time has been pretty strong. They do have the double Infernal Drake to help provide a little bit of extra damage where they may be lacking in just raw AD from the Kalista. But Quas' Alawi now has picked up a Sterix Gauge in addition to a Sheen, so he's going to be packing quite a punch, as we saw him hammer down upon Solo in the last fight with a flash auto to just seal the deal. Now Tempo Storm utilizing this Baron buff, they're going to be pushing on the top side of the map. Mid lane, as you mentioned, already taken down from the last push. They have super minions spawning in that lane. Pressure down on GCU. Eventually, somebody's going to have to go deal with that one, but the minions are still a little far away. That lets Tempo Storm just be content to set up shop right outside this top lane tower.
Yep, and it's going to be just a moment before those super creeps make their way into that mid lane base. Ooh. All 5 members set up here.
Solo gets chunked. He's just got to walk away, and that's going to be the go button for the side of Tempo Storm. They take down the top lane tower. They take down the top lane inhibitor. Don't even really need to force a fight here. Gold Cognac just have to back away.
We see Fly made a vessel as well. Tentacles spawning on their own base. It makes it very hard to defend these Nexus turrets. And Tempo Storm, without even getting a kill, might be able to end this game.
Well, looks like they're going to force the fight here from the side of Gold Coin United, but there's knockouts aplenty and a knockback as well as Santorin gets chunked low and gets chunked out of the fight. One last tentacle, Salap will take him down. A double kill there for Quas' Alawi as he cleans up a kill on the Fly. And that's going to be Tempo Storm saying, you got to win? I like that. I'll take one for ourselves.
Off the back of the Alawi pick coming in for Quas here. Really nice decision to flex that Jace mid. We were talking about the risks of it, the fact that they're going to go double AD threats in the top and mid lane. It did feel like GCU thought, there's no way that they're going to go for it. They choose not to ban the Alawi. Instead, you see that Quas is like, nope, I'm still going to pick this. And now the Galio doesn't have a great place to go. It gets smashed in the mid lane. GCU does not appear to have a good counter pick ready for this Alawi. Kennen did not get a CS lead, did not really chunk him out at all. And then the game looked like it still might be okay for GCU given the fact that their bot lane was winning, but they were a little slow forcing that advantage. They start falling behind in the objective game when they should have actually been fine in it. And then there's no looking back for the side of Tempo Storm.
Yeah, and the bot lane may have been doing better this game than they did in game number 1, but they didn't outright stomp the lane. No. So Kalista was able to get out of the laning phase. We already saw that Sheep on the Blitzcrank maybe a little bit more proactive on other places on the map because there was a lot less focus specifically from Wiggly on the bottom side. We saw a couple of counter gains coming in from the Gragas or the Maokai, making, just kind of bumping heads in the bottom side of the map, but there was no big kills to blow open that lane matchup this time.
Well, for a point, but then once Fly got his ultimate and got the blue buff and they were able to get a 2-for-0 in the bot lane, there's no reason that they should just win a fight and all go back to their lanes. Right. And then we see that you know, GCU, or excuse me, Tempo Storm resets faster. They get the Infernal Dragon. That once there's no more objectives down on the bot side, they say, all right, well, we don't really want to force a fight with a Galio maybe joining in, so we're just going to go try and trade objectives. And then the Alawi does a better job holding the turret. And that's what we're talking about, where Tempo Storm just started getting objectives when they really shouldn't have been able to. And then their comp's completely online, and it's very difficult for GCU's tanks to walk forward because they get chunked out so easily.
Yeah, normally you think when we say they play around the bottom side of the map, it's specifically because they have freeze down. But this time they played around the bottom side of the map objectively a lot better. We even saw the, the 1v3 turnaround by Quas, which, well, it wasn't Tempo Storm playing strong to that side. It was just an outplay that got them massively ahead and then transitioned into the later stages of the game. Sure, this was a Tempo Storm game, so it took a little bit of time for them to wind up, feeling strong enough to go for one of these plays. But when they wound up taking that second Infernal Drake, because Freeze was able to solo it out with the Callista and then transfer all that pressure out to the only objective left on the map, which is the Baron, they were able to reign control of the Baron pit.
And there was that small first Baron attempt that did not go Tempo Storm's way. It ended up a 1-for-1. It was not a great force, but the thing that they did was they didn't let up the pressure. So they instantly go back. They forced it again, this time at 27.5 minutes into the game. And this is where they're actually able to find the kills because they have so many Callista stacks. GCU is obviously a little indecisive. Do we go in for the steal? Do we not? Do we take the fight? They're all still pushed up pretty far given the fact that they have no mid-inner turret anymore. They're able to get chased down here. Fly almost gets out using the Justice Punch, but the Fate's Call comes in just in time to knock him out of that. Then they focus him down. They're going to be able to grab these 2 kills relatively quickly. And then with the 2 men dead, very easy to shove up the mid lane. They grab their first inhibitor of the game and close out shortly after that.
So Tempo Storm, much better objective control, or at least fights around the objectives this time around. We see big factors in the damage of that were really just the solo lanes in this one. Even though Freeze was really solid with the ability to take those dragons, to take those barons, the fact that Selfie got ahead in the mid lane and much more of a dominant carry-centric style, win the lane, eventually win the game because of that, and because Quas had himself a very favorable matchup that at least he understands, was able to really, carry through that game for Tempo Storm.
And I think that's the kind of thing, and we talked about why we like best of 5 so much. Once again, here you see, it's probably the last time Quas gets his hands on Alawi because maybe, GCU has another thing up their sleeve to deal with it, but I was not particularly impressed by the Kennen. I understand the idea. It's a range matchup versus a melee. You should be able to bully it, but that was not quite the case. Quas was able to hold on, and then like we were saying, Alawi, a lot of people would consider it probably, like we said, a cheese pick. It's not an early game focused one, and come mid to late game, it was extremely strong around the objective control.
Right, and Solo's Kennen pickup, while it didn't necessarily dominate the Alawi in lane, wasn't necessarily the problem coming out from Gold Coin. He did fairly well on the pick, but it didn't really apply anything to their kind of composition that they were building around with the Galio and the Maokai that had the ability to go in. Sure, you can wind up heroes interesting on the Kennen at some point, but this is AD Kennen who was bullying the Alawi with auto attacks. He didn't necessarily provide an extra threat for those fights. He kind of teleported in, took a shock blast, and had to get out.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a failure of the pick in my mind because Kennen is picked to get a lead. And if you don't get a lead on Kennen, it's not doing its job. And that was the case this time around. It becomes irrelevant come mid to late game because it's fallen behind and it can't actually bully this Alawi pick and generate any kind of man advantages. And it's just one of the kind of things where, maybe you take that matchup, you can play it again. Maybe Solo says, oh, I learned how to play the matchup correctly now. But if that's not the case, I don't know if you really want to risk taking another pick into Alawi. It could end up on the permaban list.
Yeah, and also having the flex pick of Galio into the mid lane. If you know that the Jace is an option that can bully it around, it's one of the things that we saw bullying out tanks in the top lane to begin with. You put this one in the mid lane matchup, all of a sudden the flexibility of Tempo Storm really starts to shine through in these best of 5 situations.
And especially with the lethality buffs, if you end up ahead of the other teams, tanks, once again, GCU did have a very tanky team comp, but if you can get far enough ahead of that armor stacking, it's really not a problem to get a lot of AD threats in the top and mid lane. So like you said, Galio may end up falling down on GCU's priority list.
Yeah, so game 2 is complete, and this series is all tied up at 1 game apiece, so stick around after the break to see if GCU or Tempo Storm will be able to jump out to a lead in game number 3. Able to Justice Punch onto Freeze. First blood has already gone down. It's going to be Solo that takes down Wiggly, who is joining the fray. Quas is in the backline trying to cause some chaos, but he only winds up going down. Infernal Dragon goes to Tempo Storm, but the fight might be going over to GCU. Selfie on the backside gets taunted up, taken down by Fly. Maokai was taking it up first, and now it's going to be Santorin taking a lot of damage here. The Test of Fate coming in, and Santorin actually winds up going down to the Spirit popping on him. Gets explosive cast out of that one. He won't want to fall into the Test of Fate Spirit, but he gets his ultimate off beforehand, so Tempo Storm got to be a little bit careful. They've rooted up on Freeze, actually, who's stuck in the front line. He's going to use the hero's exit in this case, but the Ren stack slow him down. Wiggly's there to knock him up with a body slam, and Freeze picks up a kill for Tempo Storm. And a knock back as well as Santorin gets chunked low and gets chunked out of the fight. One last tentacle slap will take him down. A double kill there for Quas as Alawi. He cleans up a kill on the Fly.